Hi, everybody, and welcome to this event. My name is Lois Fossen. I am the co-governor of the Documentary Peer Group. On behalf of the Television Academy and our Peer Group Executive Committee, our PGEC, we want to welcome you to tonight's event. We're very pleased to have special guests with us tonight for our Meet the Decision Makers at YouTube. Before we begin, I want to introduce my co-governor, Dan Berman. Dan, can you come on? Hi, Dan. Dan will be working with me behind the scenes. He'll be taking questions from you all. After about an hour of conversation, we'll open up the floor so you can send in your questions and interact with the panelists. So thank you, Dan. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce first Suzanne Daniels, who is the Global Head of Original Content at YouTube. Hi, Suzanne, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Suzanne is joined by Nadine, who is the Head of Learning and Impact at YouTube Originals. Hey, Nadine. I wonder if Nadine, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't seem to switch off my video. It doesn't let me. So someone maybe. Yes, thank you. There we go. Hi.
There you are. Hi, Nadine. And finally joining us is Alex Piper, who's the Head of Unscripted at YouTube Originals. So these are our three special guests. I'm going to begin by having each of you just very briefly, in a minute or two, tell us what it is that you oversee YouTube and what it is maybe that you're looking for. Why don't we start with you, Suzanne?
I'm the global head of original content at YouTube, and we currently produce content in 8 languages across the globe, and in 8 priority markets. We work on we work on almost every genre. We don't do a lot of scripted. We do some low budget scripted with creators, but we do a lot of different types of reality content, docs and children's and educational and music oriented and personality driven. Nadine and Alex will tell you more.
My name's Nadine Zijlstra, and I oversee our learning, our originals that are focused on learning and impact. And I really do feel like I've got the dream job that I get to use this enormous free platform. I mean, 2 billion monthly viewers, to be able to move towards things that have impact. So what are we looking for? You know, obviously we want to use the power of the platform in the most profound way we can. And so we want shows that have strong takeaways, but they've got to do it in a YouTube-y way. Like if it just looks the same as everything else, then it's not really true to our platform. So we're looking for things that have enormous amounts of impact, and we can talk a bit later about our programming focus and things that feel like they're made for YouTube.
Alex?
Hi, everybody. I don't know how to follow up those two, but yeah, here's what I would say. I oversee globally the music and personalities verticals for YouTube. And, you know, obviously music is very much in the DNA of YouTube. And we're always looking for dynamic storytelling from our artists. And then on the personality side, we're always leaning into our creator community, right? That's the one thing that separates us from so many of the other outlets out there. And I think, you know, 3, 5, 10 years ago, a creator was defined as something different than it is today, right? And I think we see creators anywhere from your kind of more traditional celebrities and public figures, all the way down to, you know, young creators, new creators who are just now starting to create user-generated content and using YouTube as the best platform to launch that content to the audience that Nadine was talking about. So in a lot of ways, we're just looking to align our programming around the passion projects and initiatives that our creators and artists who are already leaned into the platform are embracing.
Great. Nadine, you used the phrase, it has to look YouTube-y. Can you say more about what that means?
Yeah, actually, we talk about this a lot. Like I would say it's one of the things we spend the most time trying to communicate. And I think that really comes down to an authenticity, that there is a honesty between the content YouTube makes and the user at home. And in fact, you know, the way kids can say something that make it all just make sense. But we were chatting to, so I also oversee our family programming, and we were chatting to some kids about the difference between YouTube and the other places that they get content. And one of the kids put it so well. She said, you know, when I want to watch something as a family, then I watch on the living room on our TV. But when I want to watch something for me, then I go into my bedroom, I put a blanket over my head, and I pull up my YouTube, because on YouTube, they're talking to me. And I think there is this authenticity, this connection between the content and the person that is really defines what makes us different.
One of the things that we had talked about in our pre-meeting was the fact that some of our participants probably have their own YouTube channels, which is obviously unique from many of the other platforms and organizations that are looking for content. I'm curious if any of you, and Alex, you mentioned it, what else do you think differentiates you from other outlets in terms of the content you're looking for and the content creators that you might be wanting to reach?
I think in large part, Nadine hit it right on the head, right? I think YouTube was built 15 years ago off the back of people pointing their camera or their phone back at themselves and saying, I have something I want to share. I have a story that I want to tell, right? And there was no wall between what they were saying and their audience, right? And they were able to slowly but surely build up subscribers, build up their own audience and their own community, right? And I think in so much, whether it be on broadcast TV or on cable or even in some of the streaming services today, there still are certain walls. There still are people telling you what you can do, what you should do, who you should put in your shows, how often you should put it out, all of those things. And YouTube really democratized all that a long time ago. And then so YouTube Originals, when it came about, it was like, okay, well, now we sit in this interesting Venn diagram, right? Between YouTube being a social media platform, which it is, right? It has its own creator community and its own user generated content. But in the same time, we want to be able to serve our 2 billion unique users every month some premium content, right? And so in a lot of ways, we are on the more traditional side. So YouTube Originals fits right in the middle of that Venn diagram, where I think we want to do premium content, but we want to do it through the lens and pull focus through the lens of our creator community at all times, because they're the one thing that differentiates us from everybody else. So a lot of our fellow streamers, they may be focused on acquiring a subscriber, right? And finding content that makes somebody feel like the auto pay that they're setting to their credit card every month is worthwhile. We're free, right? So your access to YouTube, no matter how many streamers you might decide to put on your subscription list, YouTube is still going to be a part of that list. And there's so many people coming to YouTube for so many different things, right? We are the world's largest video library. And so I think we have an opportunity to support our creators and our artists directly, right? To say, what is it that you guys are passionate about? What are the projects that you might not be able to accomplish without our financial assistance, without our expertise, without us being involved in becoming a value add? And when we can closely align with our creator community like that, that's where our biggest wins come from.
You just raised the perfect phrase, your financial contribution. Can you guys talk, can any of you speak a little bit about budgets and what you do pay? Obviously, you know, we have a very large audience with us today, almost 500 members of the Academy, and most of them are creators. And so they're trying to earn a living as well as, you know, provide great content. So the money question does come into it.
Well, I'll take that. I'm not going to get specific, but I am going to say that there's a huge range of what we pay, because there's a huge range of what we do. And, you know, in answer to your last question, you were talking about what makes something YouTube. Well, one thing is that we're not locked into any kind of format. So there were so many things 5 years ago when I got to YouTube that I had to rethink, so many paradigms that and contextual things that I used to use to think about what would make a good program. I was no longer locked into time slots. I was no longer locked into a 22-minute format, a 42-minute format, a 75-minute, hour and a half format. Anything goes. So, you saw the Justin Bieber clip in the sizzle reel. Those were 10-minute episodes by and large. Liza Koshy's scripted comedy that we do with her is a low-budget scripted comedy. That's well under $2 million an episode. When we were buying high-end scripted content for the subscription service YouTube Premium, we were paying a lot more for those types of programs. But we ended up pivoting over a year ago and deciding that we were going to no longer be doing premium content behind the paywall. And you can access all YouTube originals, including everything we make behind the paywall, and now you get them ad-free when you do that. And there's ancillary content as well. But there's also all of our content is available, as Alex said, on AVOD, Advertiser Video On Demand, with ads. So depending on what you're delivering, a high-end 90-minute doc, or 20-episode series, or sometimes we just buy a very short form doc. There's a lot of factors that go into what we pay, and there's just a big range.
I'm curious if you can talk to how much content do you actively commission, where you go out and you're basically involved from the beginning until it launches, and how much content do you acquire? Is that a part of is that something that our creators, our members, should know about in terms of how to get to you?
We acquire about in our YouTube Originals division, I'd say we acquire less than 10%. I'd say most of it is commissioned. We commission anywhere. This year was a fluky year because of COVID and the pivot and having to do the stay-at-home type of programming. So we set out to do, we believe it or not, at the beginning of the year, we set out to do 100 projects this year. And again, of varying lengths. And we'll probably get to 70, largely due to, again, COVID precautions and delays. But I think last year we did 60 or 70 projects. So that,
on that question of acquisitions, it's so funny. It's like, because of this YouTubey thing, the acquisitions are hard to find. Like there might be like it's the lane of things that feel uniquely YouTube. Most of the time we know about them so early that we are involved in some way. Like, it's seldom that you would get to the end of a project and there would be something that we, if it was really YouTubey, that we weren't somehow tracking, I would say.
YouTube does make acquisitions of scripted films, finished scripted films. But that's done by a guy named David Lee in the partnerships division.
And so the things that you do acquire, is it because you saw it at a festival, or is there an open door, an open mailbox somewhere that creators can submit to you?
Both. We go to festivals and we also take submissions.
And that information is readily available for all of our members if they go looking for it.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. A couple weeks ago, you guys had a marvelous announcement about a fund that you had set aside, where you specifically want to support BIPOC and filmmakers of color, creators of color. Can one of you share information about that initiative and the exciting news behind it and how it's working?
Sure. Why don't we have Nadine and Alex each talk about what they're looking for to meet the goals of that fund?
Totally. So in our work, on the learning and impact side, we really think about racial justice as a subject, and what is it that we as YouTube can do to educate users around racial justice. But again, we're looking for that YouTubey piece. So just as an example, we announced last week that we are working on a show called Barbershop Medicine. And the reason is that there's an enormous amount of really interesting creators, doctors on our platform, doctors who are creators. And so we love the idea of taking these doctors and putting them into a barbershop to talk about medicine. It's actually based on a UCLA study where they did research on the power of barbershops as a central a place to educate people around health specifically. So that's a good example that you know that's all about the takeaway at the end, about how can we talk about racial justice and helping people understand racial justice in the context of their neighborhoods and what their health outcomes might be. So thinking a lot about educating people around racial justice and how they can understand it in a way that's relatable but still entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. And I think beyond just education, I think we're also looking to kind of support and amplify and activate, you know, key important voices across the YouTube platform, right? I think the YouTube Black creator community is one that's continuing to grow year on year. And I think it's important for us to center the unique perspectives that they offer. So I think what the greatest part of the $100 million fund that you were referencing, Lois, is that it's not just about us finding programming money to support projects by and for Black creators, but it's also about what we can do with Black owned and operated production companies, DPs, directors, et cetera. And it's also about acquisition, right? How can we bring unique and important voices to our platform, center their perspectives, and you know, support them no matter what it is that they're doing, whether that be around racial justice, racial inequality, or whether that just be around their own areas of interest, right? So on the music and personality side, we're looking for creators who we can work with, and we're not saying, hey, so what do you want to do in terms of, you know, social inequality or racial justice? We're saying, what do you want to do, period? Like, what are you interested in? What is the perspective that you want to share with the world? How do you want to interact with the broad YouTube audience? And it's really interesting what they're coming back with, right? So a lot of them are coming back and saying, yes, of course, I want to do something around this movement, this moment. And yet others who we're interacting with in the production community are saying, you know what, I'd like to go in a different direction. I'd like to do a cooking show. I'd like to do a music show. I'd like to do a fashion show, whatever it is. And I think that's fantastic because the Black community in general, but especially the YouTube Black community, it's not a monolith, right? And so we are able, because of all of the different genres that we do programming in, we're able to really offer up any number of different opportunities. You know, to Suzanne's point earlier, all of our shows are so bespoke, right? I always tell people that we are the square peg or the square hole for your square peg, right? Because we can do almost anything. It's the challenge of our job in many ways, because there's no real template to what a YouTube show looks like other than that authenticity that Nadine was talking about. Beyond that, every show kind of starts from square one. And so what we can offer the creator community, whether that be, you know, one of our YouTube Black creators or any of our global creators, is really the same thing, which is how can we support your passions and your visions and your perspectives.
And
One of the things,
go ahead, Suzanne.
I was going to say, one of the other things that I think makes something YouTubey is that we try and tap into culturally relevant zeitgeist moments. And because we are incredibly nimble, largely due to the creators we work with who know how to turn around shows quickly, know how to edit, have production capabilities in their home, we are able to put things together very quickly and respond to what's happening in the world. So that's something we look forward to.
And can you remind our audience, do you hope to spend out that $100 million fund in the next year? What is sort of the timeline in terms of when that money will go out to creators?
By Friday. No, I'm only kidding.
Hang up now.
I've got it in my pocket. I got to spend it by Friday. It's over the course of 3 years. And as Alex alluded, it is not just for programming, it is partially for marketing use and to amplify Black voices, and also for partnerships to build new creators.
Great. And if people want
and sorry, just one thing on that too, Lois. I think, you know, that 3-year runway for a doc maker doesn't feel like a long time, but in our universe is actually a really long time. And so just to say, you know, if we're getting outreach from folks, it would be good to get things that really feel YouTubey, that it's not like, oh, maybe they'll take the show that I've been working on for the last 3 years, but like what's the thing that this amazing community of filmmakers could do with YouTube specifically. And I personally would rather have one idea that actually fitted rather than so many that might be great for someone else but don't have that like fundamental essence.
And I presume if you got a proposal and you liked it, but you felt it wasn't quite on the mark, that you would see if the creator was open to shifting and adapting, if that vision could work with your vision ultimately.
I think a lot of what we do, whether it be with the Black Creator Fund or whether it be with any of the sort of projects that we work on, have some of that element to it, right? I think it's an unfair expectation for the production community to expect that they're going to be able to know how to create a perfect YouTube show, right? I've been on the other side I've been on the selling side. And when you're creating shows, when you're developing shows, you're often developing it for not just one room, but for 6 rooms, 12 rooms, 20 rooms, right? And so there's a certain kind of sanitizing effect that goes through it, you know, where you're just kind of giving the essence of what you think the idea is, and then you're making certain tweaks here or there depending on where it is that you might sell it. And I think there are some additional tweaks when you sell a show to YouTube that maybe you're not going to have to overcome elsewhere. And we understand that. We expect that. We don't expect every one of our potential production partners to know all of the different things that we'd be expecting, what talent we should be using, or what interactive features they should be using, or any of those things. And so we often are in some level of the development process with our production partners and with our creators to try and find a way to make sure that the idea has those uniquely YouTube elements, but also still has the essence of the creative that they initially brought in.
That's great. And spoken like a great executive. It is about collaboration at the end of the day. So in terms of this national reckoning that we're having now about systemic racism and police brutality, you mentioned, Nadine, that that's very much something you guys are interested in. Is there such a thing as something that's too political, or that, you know, what is that, where's that wall? Is there a wall in terms of you all saying, you know, we don't go there?
I mean, it's definitely something we talk about, which is, you know, the responsibility of our platform to be giving accurate information that people that we can really verify and stand behind. So I think firstly, just making sure that it's, you know, undebatably true is always going to be something, a lens we're looking for. You know, in terms of something too political, I definitely think, you know, and Lois, as we experienced, you know, we do much better when we're using the platform to speak to a broad audience. When it's using the platform to speak to more niche audiences, I think we can get a little bit lost. I don't know if there's any other color, Suzanne, you would want to.
Yeah, no, there is. Well, there definitely is such a thing as too political, and we do take a nonpartisan approach. And you saw a clip with President Obama, who was in Dear Class of 2020, which was a really special 4-hour live stream event we held for all graduates, high school, college, who were, and internationally, who were missing their graduation in this past spring. And we took care to make sure we had a lot of different types of voices with different backgrounds wishing our graduates well. And we do that we just launched a special called You Choose, which is an interactive special about information on voting. And you'll notice if you see that, it's definitely a nonpartisan approach too.
Great. In addition to obviously the reckoning on systemic racism, we're still coming out of this tide, I want to believe, of Me Too and Time's Up and looking more at gender parity. How does that weigh into the work you do, the projects you're seeking, the makers that you work with?
We were so proud to win a Gracie Award recently for our one of the episodes of our BookTube series. So it is certainly something we think about a lot and work, choice by choice, moment by moment to show up as much as we can.
Yeah, but both in front of and behind the camera, working with women, working with LGBTQ, working with as many diverse voices as possible is something we have strived to do for a long time. It's not something that's new. Several years ago, we did the Step Up series. We did season 1 and 2, and then again, that was for SVOD, so we let it go. Stars picked it up for season 3 and 4. But we were really proud of the fact that that show was run by a woman, and all of the directors of the episodes were either LGBTQ or women for our 2 seasons that we worked on the show. So we're constantly looking for opportunities for diverse voices.
Yeah, and I think we know that kind of with great power, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think we know that the platform, because of the 2 billion unique users that we have monthly, comes with great power, right? But it also comes with that responsibility to kind of amplify key voices of the movement, and center their voice and their experience on the platform. So I think we've always been committed to that. But I think through the Black Creators Fund that you were referencing, and just through the conversations in the zeitgeist at the moment, I think we're as focused on it as we ever have been, and will continue that commitment, even after the election has passed or some of the conversations have passed. I think we have a long-term commitment to it, and I think you'll definitely see it continue through in our programming in 2021 and beyond.
The good news about the racial justice movement and the Me Too movement is that it's made it easier, because before that it was harder than it should have been. It was something that I found that I had to mandate to get compliance, which shouldn't have been the case. But now we're in a different time, and it's really great.
Yeah, it is wonderful to see the changes happening on board levels and staff levels and obviously across programming. Alex, you referred to the 2 billion unique users, which is a number that is mind-boggling. And so I'm curious, this is sort of a little less about programming, maybe a little bit more in terms of marketing and audience, but that is an overwhelming number of people coming who are all looking for lots of different kinds of programming, as you mentioned. That creates both a wonderful opportunity for lots of different kinds of programming, but also a huge challenge. How do you marry X person with the right content? Can you guys talk a little bit about how you do that at YouTube, where you are speaking to such a huge audience? How do you bring them and get them to the right place?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Obviously, search and discovery is one of our biggest problems, right? We're the world's largest video library. I always use the analogy that when YouTube Originals does a show and puts it up on the platform, it's like pouring a can of soda into the ocean, right? And so I think that is why it's so important for us to find buzzy, breakthrough sort of programming that is easy to find. When we did Justin Bieber Seasons, the title of the show was Seasons, but I guarantee you nobody typed Seasons into the search engine, right? They just typed Justin Bieber, it dropped you on his channel, and there it was. And so I think when we can have that sort of alignment with the content and the creators, it helps with search and discovery. But to your point, I think, I describe YouTube often as like a modern metropolis. Like if you think about Manhattan, if you were to drop me in the center of Manhattan right now and I was to walk 10 blocks north, 10 blocks south, 5 blocks east, 5 blocks west, I'd be in a different neighborhood, right? And each one of those neighborhoods is unique, right? It has a different socioeconomic background, it has different racial makeup, it has different interests. And that's true about YouTube as well, right? So some people are coming to YouTube just for the beauty influencer content, or just for music, or just for how-to, or just for gaming. And they come for that and they stay for that. And then when they're done with that, they leave YouTube. And so we often make shows that are super serving the needs of those neighborhoods, right? And playing into what that community is saying they want more of, right? But at the other end of the spectrum, there are times in which you're not just from the Upper West Side or the Lower East Side, but you consider yourself a New Yorker. And those are our tentpole moments, which we're always looking for, ways to make the community come together as one. And so you'll see different things like Dear Class of 2020, like our New Year's Eve show that we're doing in December. David Blaine, a lot of our global musical artists that will do a big show around. These are tent poles that are supposed to not just bring one neighborhood together, but bring our entire global mosaic together. And I think we're always looking for ways to service both ends of that spectrum effectively.
Yeah, we do target the heavy user. And one of the reasons that Alex is focused on music as a vertical is that 20 to 25% of our watch time in any given year is music related videos. So we get help from our marketing and research team. We are a part of Google. Google's not a data company. So we have a lot of access to data and who's watching and what we think trends are. So we tap into that information too to develop.
Great.
And just one point to make on that, because I think people don't realize how readily available that information is. Like, Dear Class of 2020 was born off a trend we were seeing on the platform of students starting to share their Dear Class of 2020 ideas. But that's actually, there's a YouTube Trends website, like a little blog spot basically, where you can just today go, I think it's youtube.com/trends, where you can actually see what those trends are. And especially for this creative audience, I'm sure it'll spark amazing ideas.
Well, speaking of this amazing audience, I know that they want me to get a little bit more granular. I know you can't narrow in more on budgets because, as with everything, they vary greatly. And Suzanne, you spoke to that earlier. But could you talk about, if I'm watching this, I don't know you, sadly. I'm a person who hasn't had the opportunity to talk to you offline. But I really have an idea that I want to share with you. Could you be really specific about how people would share a project with you? Is it through an email portal? Is it about a one-page proposal? How specific can you be with our creators so that they know how to get a great idea to you for consideration?
Send your ideas to sdaniels at, no, I'm sorry. Well, now you know us, so you can reach out to me.
Nadine, right?
No, I mean, we obviously, we take pitches of all shapes and sizes from all areas. Normally they're coming through one of the agencies or, lawyers or, just kind of the traditional ways. But I think we're open to pitches of all shapes and sizes. A lot of our creators have points of contact at YouTube and are often asking those points of contact at YouTube to funnel ideas to YTO for consideration. So I think our doors are as wide open as you can get. Wouldn't
you say that I mean, that's true. And I love the spirit of that, but we do want experienced showrunners. We do want to work with, we don't work with that often first time anybody unless they come in and they are paired with someone who's going to supervise them who's experienced.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. What I would say though is that oftentimes that's where our area of expertise comes in, right? You come in with the idea, you come in with the concept, and then we can help marry you with somebody who can help on the execution, right? Suzanne is 100% right. We're obviously not just allowing the execution to go. We have to hold it to a certain standard in order for us to feel like we're qualifying it as premium content. But I think oftentimes we will get ideas from creators of all shapes and sizes or from production companies of all shapes and sizes. And just because you may be a smaller creator or a smaller production company, you still may have a big idea, right? And that's where we can help fill the void, right? So our expertise, our resources, our connections can be of great value. And so I think oftentimes, you know, what I try to explain to people, and I think most of the people in this audience understand it, right, is the vast majority of pitches that we take, unfortunately, are passes, right? There's a limit to how many projects we can do, and we have to be disciplined about where those resources go. But I love when we have a lot of pitches. I love when I sit in a development meeting and we have just a ton of pitches to go through, because that means we're doing the development part of our job. That means we're doing the outreach part of our job. And it's always the pitches that come in from the lesser known or unknown source often that spurs the most conversation. So I think we definitely want people to bring us their ideas, but I think we also want people to understand, take a look at the sort of stuff that we've done in 2020, take a look at the sort of stuff we've done in 2019, 2018. Does the sort of idea that you're pitching, does it fit in with the sort of stuff that YouTube Originals has traditionally done, with the sort of strategy that you can see interconnecting the shows that we do? And I don't want people to be overly disappointed if it ends up being a no, because hopefully in that no will also give you the ingredients necessary for the next one to potentially be a yes.
Oh, go ahead, Nadine.
No, I was just going to say the one thing that always that I always think about with independent filmmakers specifically is just how like awesome a free video platform is for filmmakers who are trying to say something and get their word out. And definitely, like it is a much easier conversation if somebody comes and they're like, I've got 25,000 subscribers on my channel, and maybe I haven't done but I've got this one thing that did something amazing on YouTube, and we're so much more ready to like work with you to figure it out, because yes, you're might never have done something with anyone else maybe, but you've shown us that you care about this platform or this little neighborhood in New York that, you know, to use Alex's analogy, like you understand our world. That's going to be so much easier than somebody who just hasn't really engaged in the platform enough. So I think if we are just going to be much more open to finding young voices who are very new and fresh if they've already got that interest in YouTube.
That is great information. What I hear you saying is obviously the idea has to match, but also a proven interest and connection to the platform is a real plus, because it sort of is proof of concept that they already know who they want to be in business with.
And even if it's not you yourself, but your idea is drifting off something you've seen on the platform that you're interested in, or, you know, just that it feels like it feels connected to who we are.
You've talked about obviously music being an area of great interest, because I believe you said 25% of your users are watching music. Are there any other sort of categories or buckets that you would point to that might be helpful for people who are thinking about approaching you? What don't you have?
Absolutely. Family-friendly content, educational content is important to us. Nadine has a show that I'm excited about called Onyx Family Dinner. The Onyx family is a top creator, and we're going to see them cook and sit down to dinner every night and what they talk about. Let's see what else. Educational, children's programming, family friendly, and then, you know, we also look for one thing. We look for that this audience, but will definitely be relevant for this audience, is we look for interesting stories from interesting types of personalities. And I know that sounds pretty broad, but a recent example of that that Alex oversaw was the what's her name? Paris Hilton documentary. And the Paris Hilton documentary ended up being far more compelling and fascinating than I even imagined when we first bought it. And a real true look behind the scenes, and really someone who was ready to share and tell her story in her voice. Talk about authenticity. So, you know, we also look for content like that.
Yeah,
That's
and
meaningful on the platform.
yeah, just to add to that, Suzanne, I think that when you watch the sizzle at the beginning, right, what you were seeing from some of the clips that we took from the shows, but also the response that we got in mainstream media, you saw people often saying the same thing, which is this person in a way you've never seen them before, right? And I think that's true about all of our programming, right? So if you're a creator or an artist in any of the genres or neighborhoods that I was talking about earlier, as long as you're willing to pull back the curtain and share something that we don't know about you, share a side of you that we're not aware of, dig deeper, then you qualify. You know what I'm saying? I think what we're not looking to do is popcorn programming that's disposable, stuff that feels like it could just be lifted and put up on a cable outlet or another streamer and not feel like it has that authentic YouTube feel. And I think if you look at our shows, whether it be with Lele Pons, whether it be with Paris Hilton, whomever it may be, anyone in between, the ingredients are the same, right? The entry point is the same, which is you may think you know me, but I'm about to tell you that there's a whole lot about me that you don't know. And I'm going to be willing to share it with you. And you're going to feel like you're on that journey right there with them at their shoulder, right? Where there's no wall between you and their voice. And I think that connection between a creator's voice and their audience being so pure is what allows that community to build around that creator. And we often see that halo effect that YouTube Originals can have on working with a creator, right? They've worked very hard. A lot of these creators work very hard to build their subscriber base. And oftentimes they come to us to help them when they want to do something that's a little bit different than the channel content that they've been doing regularly, right? So we'll work with Dude Perfect. They're known for their trick shots and they're known for their Rube Goldbergs and their comedy, but they'll come to us and they'll say, we want to do a behind the scenes look at our tour and our relationships and our families. And that isn't the sort of stuff we would traditionally do, but we feel like with teaming up with you guys, we can bring that to the surface. Lele Pons says, I want to reveal to the world that I have OCD and how deeply it affects me. And I want to do that with you rather than just doing it on my own. And I think the connection with YouTube Originals allows them a certain safety net in terms of understanding that in working with us, they're going to share something different with their audience than they traditionally would on their regular content cadence.
Great. I want to just say again, for the audience out there, please, if you have questions that you want to send in, please send them in and my colleague Dan will be going through them and he'll forward me some questions starting in a few minutes. So please know that we'd love to get to your questions so that you feel you have access to our guests. Usually in non-COVID times, when we do this live at the Television Academy headquarters, it's a lot easier to get the questions and to have more of a conversation, but I want to try to keep that as a holistic part of this process as best we can, given that we're talking to computers and looking at ourselves all day.
Lois, I was just going to share, just thinking about 21, and we're obviously buying for 21 at the moment, and just thinking of this audience, there's a couple of things just in terms of where I think we're looking for stuff that might be helpful to people. But in the learning and impact space, we're very interested in sustainability. Is a huge area of interest for our audience, like top issue for millennials, and so really thinking about how can we have a conversation about sustainability that's still inspiring and fun and has strong takeaway that you don't feel so overwhelmed by what's happening in the world, but you feel like you can take action and learn something so that you can do something. So sustainability is a big area on the learning impact side that I think could be interesting. The other on more of the family side, and I'm not sure how much this audience is interested in that, but I do just want to say, I feel like there's that gaming community for the under 12 audience, like there's so much energy around that audience on YouTube, and I don't feel like I've really seen the like fresh idea of how to speak to that 8 to 12 gamer in an interesting way. So just throwing out those two in case that's helpful.
And did I hear you correctly earlier when you were talking about the trends and you were talking about how the special with Barack Obama looking at graduation, that sort of grew out of a trend that your users actually started on the platform. So is it fair to assume that if people are following the trends, they might find a great idea where they think, oh my God, everybody's really thinking about this, but nobody's really looking at it this way. And that's also a way for people to, one small way for people to think about content that could be appropriate for you all.
Totally. And I think it'll spark your juices. Like there's just such good stuff in that trends thing. The other one that I use a lot is Google Trends. Google Trends is totally available to show you, to compare what people are searching for. And you can look at YouTube specifically, Google more broadly. But it's a great way to like calibrate. I'm interested in something, but is what I'm interested in actually what everybody else is interested in? And so I use those a lot, like if that's how, and they're free and available to everybody.
One of the things that I always find interesting is you guys actually partner with a lot of different people. It just so happens that we partner with you, but you partner with, can you talk about from the various perspectives, your partnerships with other platforms, with other content makers, just because I think there's some interesting intersections happening there that some people might not be aware of, that could also lead to great programming ideas.
We do. Thanks for asking that question. We partner with, we make all kinds of different deals. We have worked with all the major studios. We work with a lot of smaller production companies. We co-finance, we completely finance, and and then we own the content through what we call YouTube Studios. We've allowed for linear plays, so we'll make a deal where a cable company can take a linear play at the same time as our digital play, because we don't consider it competitive. So we're really open and we're really flexible in terms of deals, and we certainly carve if you have the rights to something interesting that means it can't air in England or wherever, we can make a deal where we're a global platform, but we can exclude a country. So we're quite flexible.
And is geo-filtering something that's pretty normal in terms of your business practice?
No, that's a good question. Mostly we get the global format rights, but we have geo-filtered in the past, and we will do that.
And is it, you don't own all the content, obviously.
No.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you own and what the content creators own? And I'm sure it varies greatly, but if there's sort of a general parameter?
No, there isn't. It actually, it's sort of deal by deal.
And so your goal is to own some of the content so that you can control its distribution in perpetuity, kind of.
Yes, but unlike the major networks and cable networks, it's not to own 90% of it. It's really the reverse. We own a smaller percentage in general.
That makes sense, given how you started. I'm curious, we've been talking about your pipeline and great things that have come out in 2020. Is there something that's coming up? You have alluded to a couple of them, a family show that Nadine has premiering, but are there any other projects you wanted to take this opportunity to let us know about that are coming?
Alex, did you mention Homecoming yet?
No, haven't mentioned it. We're doing, I think what we saw with the great success of Dear Class of 2020 was that there's an opportunity in this kind of quarantine lifestyle that we're all living to take events that used to be tremendous social gatherings and really powered by the energy of people coming together and now have been diluted through the quarantine. There's a way for us to use our platform to be that gathering place for people. And I think we're continuing that tradition with our version of the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Homecoming. So HBCU Homecoming is a project that we're actually working on in conjunction with BET, just to speak to a partnership that you were talking about, Lois. And that's coming up in the next few weeks. We're really excited about that. in order to take advantage of our global platform, we have a global New Year's Eve show that we're going to be doing at the end of the year that I think will be a great button to the year, which will be seen through a variety of different territories as we kind of chase the sun across the globe on New Year's Eve. And then on the music and personality side, I'll just name a few, and I'm sure Nadine, you have some Pride projects that you can share as well. But around HBCU Homecoming, we also have our second creator games with Mr. Beast that's coming up here very shortly. The first one was so successful, broke the record for peak concurrence on a YTO live stream earlier this spring. We have our second installment of our social justice special, Bear Witness, Take Action, that will be coming in early December. We also have our award show, the Streamies, that will be coming just after that. And then we have our weekly music show that we're doing now called Released, which airs at every Thursday night at 11:45 p.m. in the lead up to the release of a brand new music video for our, basically it serves as the best possible kind of tailwind of support that we can give to our artists by creating a bespoke music show that lives on their channel, brings all of our YouTube global audience together in one place, and then pushes them all directly to the premiere of a brand new music video at midnight on Friday morning. Nadine?
But I was just going to say, one of the silver linings of the limitations forced upon us from COVID and the pandemic is that it's forcing us to do things differently. And that sometimes is a good challenge. And so Alex mentioned the Streamies, and it's the 10th anniversary of the Streamies this year. And it won't be on a big stage at the Beverly Hilton. It's going to be really different type of format. And I think in pursuing a different format, it will actually be more organic to YouTube as a show. So I'm excited about that. And Nadine, I don't know what you're going to talk about, but mention Lockdown, because I love Lockdown.
Oh yeah, Lockdown is one. Actually, it just recently won the Prix Jeunesse Award, which is a very prestigious award for kids programming. But Lockdown was the scripted series we launched during lockdown, which is so crazy innovative because it's a scripted series, and all the kids had to shoot themselves. And we were getting a lot of COVID programming in, and you'd get shots from like really fancy Hollywood types, and you'd be like, dude, you couldn't have found that, like the freaking focus. Like seriously, look who you are, and you can't get the focus. And the kids are shooting Lockdown. Their backdrops are rocking. They like look phenomenal. Anyway, the whole thing's shot by the kids, but is a like nail biting drama. Watch it, Lockdown. And then I can't really, it's so hard to choose your favorite. They're all like babies that you're working on. So I'll just mention the one that we're launching this week. But on our series BookTube, we have a conversation with Jason Reynolds, who wrote Stamped, which is a remix of Ibram Kendi's book. But it is inspiring, really, really awesome piece of content, directed by Nadia Halgren. Really, she did Michelle Obama's Becoming film. But anyway, so I'm super excited for Thursday. Stay tuned.
Terrific. I knew our audience wouldn't let me down, almost 500 of you. We're getting lots of great questions. I'm just checking my text feed for the first time. So great question from Angelo. How do you use data when determining your programming?
Well, we use data in a lot of different ways. One of the ways we talked about, which is tapping into trends that we learn from Google and YouTube. And then I think a really interesting example of how we use data is for the show we launched called Cobra Kai, which we recently gave up and it went to Netflix. But we loved it. We were sad to see it go, but we're glad it got a new home and is doing well. So when that was pitched to us, we were able to look up data that showed us that The Karate Kid was a title that was searched a lot. It was Googled a lot and searched a lot, and it was searched by young audiences. So we knew that there was still a huge fan base, and whether that was because Will Smith had done a more recent Karate Kid, I'm not sure, but in any case, that led us to say, okay, this is a piece of IP that matters to people, and this might be a good idea to develop this show. Versus, for instance, the same company, Sony, called me and said, we're taking Mad About You out for a reboot. Would you like to hear the pitch? And I was able to tell from data that Mad About You was not a search title from our heavy users at YouTube and wouldn't be a good fit for a YouTube original. So I didn't even take the pitch, even though that was personally a show I really liked. So that's an example of how we use data.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I prior to coming to YouTube, I worked at a broadcast network, and it was borderline shocking to me how little we knew about our audience. Right? We knew the very basics, age, gender, etc. We didn't really have a deep dive on who they were, why they were tuning in, etc. I think we have a lot more information at our disposal now as to not only who's watching, but why they're watching, how long they're watching, what it is that they're interested in, and what it is that they're not interested in. And some of that information comes from that kind of quantitative data and metrics and all of that, but it also just comes straight from the YouTube page itself. If you look at a YouTube page, right, there's a like and dislike, there are comments underneath, there are suggested for you videos over here that you can drag your cursor on and click on when something gets boring. So we can get a sense of what's working and what's not working, not just from numbers on a spreadsheet, but actually from the sort of qualitative data that lives right there on the creator's page. And not only are we getting it, the creators themselves are getting it. And so it really aids the collaborative process when we're trying to figure out what pivots we need to make or what we might want to do or not do, because we have a feedback loop with our audience that I think a lot of our competitors don't.
Terrific. We have a question from Gordon, who, hats off, he's based in the UK and he's with us. It has to be the middle of the night for him. So Gordon, you deserve, a Guinness, but also the question, which is a great one. Here in the UK, who do I contact in this region with regard to submissions for a music doc with global appeal? Anybody in the UK he should be reaching out to?
Yes, Luke Hyams. It's Hyams.
All right, there you go. And then Sean, can you speak a bit more about the business side of YouTube Originals and the decision to break down the paywall? Are most profits coming from ad revenue at this point? Thank you for that, Sean.
The answer is yes, that most profits are now coming from ad revenue. Although we drive a small percentage of premium signups, just based on having the content available there, ad-free and with ancillary content. So some revenue still comes from that as well. I think it was a decision that we made for a lot of reasons, but the primary reasons being that we felt that as Alex mentioned, there's 2 billion unique users a month, and people just didn't like that there was an exclusivity. There was a lot of negative feedback about not having access to the content, and at the end of the day, our CEO, Susan Wojcicki, just decided that all of the content should be made available on AVOD, again, in addition to SVOD. So that was part of the platform ethos, if you will. So it wasn't made for a decision that was a business reason. Actually, it was really made for a decision that was more of a marketing, feel good about being a YouTube user reason.
But I think you would even agree, Suzanne, at this point that it's really unlocked a new world for us, right? It's allowed us to become more closely aligned with what makes YouTube unique, right? That creator and artist community. And it's allowed us to take on programming that may have otherwise not been a priority, right? Because we
Yes.
didn't, we were looking at things
I'm
that
glad
would
you
drive
said that.
subscribers, and now we don't have to look at that necessarily. So we can have a broader impact and really touch that bigger global community in a way that you really couldn't as an SVOD. And when I look at some of the times that we're compared to some of these SVODs that are out there, it's a tough comparison. I mean, I'm a subscriber to a lot of these SVODs as well. They make amazing content, but what we're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to accomplish in terms of them trying to acquire a subscriber and us just trying to make unique premium content for our daily active users is really a completely different experience.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Thanks for saying that, Alex. We're much more aligned with the missions of YouTube right now, and then we were as an SVOD service. So we're much more organic part of the platform and working with creators and music and amplifying the top verticals of YouTube. And that feels like a healthier, better place for us to be.
And optimizing the impact we can have. Like behind the paywall, we could only impact, it's a lot of people, but it's not the billions of people that we can now impact in front of the paywall.
Right.
Here's a fun one. You guys get to put your creative hats on. It's from Jerry, who's a college professor. If you were creating a class, prepare students for YouTube content, producing and creating, what would you call the class?
Just repeat the question one more time.
If you were teaching a college course on how to help young students, college students, create and use YouTube, what would you name that college course? Think about it.
I would call it YouTube/creators, and basically that's the URL. That is an entire website based on teaching people how to become YouTube creators. And it's like, we don't need a class. It's all there. Just go to the URL.
It's a great resource. Nadine is right. But I think that one of the other things is I would put how to in there somewhere, because I think that's a term that gets typed into the search engine almost more than any term out there, right? People come to YouTube and they type in how to, and then what they put in after how to is all over the place. But when you think about why, YouTube is the world's second largest search engine, only to Google, and what they're searching for often is just a little bit of help, a little bit of assistance, a little bit of education, a little bit of entertainment. And so I think those words how to really power a lot of what happens on YouTube, away from YouTube originals.
I think I would call it synergies, algorithms, and breakthrough moments.
That is great. And Nadine, you just saved a bunch of college students a huge amount of tuition, though, if they just go to your site and don't pay Jerry.
But you ruined it for Jerry. Jerry's poor course. No one's signing up.
Because you probably just
Sorry, Jerry.
Tenure. And blame it on Nadine if you don't get tenure.
And another quick shout out, they just on that site launched an amazing piece of content that's just about mental health for creators, because it is very intense, I think, to be a content creator on the platform right now, where we've seen such a huge increase in usage over the last few months, and I think people are feeling burnt out. So and probably filmmakers too, actually, go check it out.
Here's a question. YouTube has so much video, as we've said. How do users find and watch the content your team is commissioning and creating? How do we know it's from YouTube? And ultimately, do you find that brand made by YouTube matters to the YouTube users? In other words, is there a upside to it being content that you guys specifically commission? And how do you market it?
It matters to us, because we think in many ways that we're positioned as the brand voice for YouTube. So it matters for us that it's stamped YouTube originals. And I think in time we'll make that impact with the viewer, and hopefully it will matter to them too, and they'll know that that it's ideally that it stands for quality, which is something we believe in and pursue.
But I will say, Suzanne, it is tricky, right? And I've only been at YouTube Originals for about 1.5 years, but it is tricky because on one side, when you do work, when you put your resources and your heart and soul and sweat equity into projects, you want attribution for it. Yet at the same time, we're really making projects for the most part that are living on our creators' channels, right? And so in some ways, the attribution doesn't always come directly back to YouTube Originals the way that it would in a traditional kind of cable or broadcast network, where you've flipped onto that network and that's the only place you're seeing it. The attribution often goes to the creator themselves. And ultimately, since one of our goals is really to support the creator community, I think we have to be okay with that, right? Because if it's a win for our creators, then it's a win for us. If it's a win for one of our artists, or our media partners, then it's a win for us. And so while it will never have the traditional kind of attribution that you would get elsewhere, I think ultimately that's not always the goal. I think it would be great if we get that attribution, because I do think that when people are surveyed and they're asked about YouTube Originals, they see a certain patina or quality that comes from YouTube Originals. And so I'd like to believe that there's an additional layer of excitement to a project when they feel like YouTube Originals is involved. But ultimately, if it's serving the needs of our creator community, then it's a win for us.
Yeah, that's the synergies part of my college class.
Speaking of your creators, here's a great question from George. Your Creator Academy is supposed to address strategies to elevate the visibility and traffic. We've tried, but to no avail. Any ideas what we could do better?
I think we would have to understand what you've tried to better answer that question.
That's fair enough. Without knowing what's happened before, it's kind of a big question. Here's from Jamie. Are you open to submissions from older creatives, or do you pretty much seek material that is created by the younger creatives?
No, I think we're open. I mean, I definitely think we're open. I think it just has to be about the content feeling relevant and impactful, and that can come from anybody's voice.
And just to say, I don't know how old the person writing that is, but there was just a New York Times article on how many older people are starting their own channels and having great success. So my favorite, and I don't know, forgive me, sir, ma'am, I don't know if Jamie's a girl or a boy, but Pasta Grannies is like one of my favorite channels. It's like a whole lot of Italian grannies who tell you how to make pasta. I mean, they're unbelievable. And there's a whole like little Manhattan neighborhood of different kinds of people who are making content who might be on the older spectrum. I'm not saying you're a granny, Jamie.
We're doing something with Korean Grandma, who's a great creator in Korea. I mean, I think we're open to it, but I think it is also important for us to say that primarily our demo is 18 to 34, right? So I don't think we ever look at the age of the person who's submitting it, but I think when we're looking to try and find like how can we create programming that hits the broadest piece of our audience, the demo that we're most likely to target is 18 to 34, or at least something that's multi-generational that allows for that 18 to 34-year-old participation.
That's a great answer. We talked earlier about how people get content and ideas, I should say, to you. And as I suspected, a lot of emails, questions along that line. One of them, though, goes back to something, Alex, you said earlier, that you get a lot of submissions through agents and agencies. We have a fair number of members who don't have agents. They are, they're not in that position. So would you say that they have an equal shot at getting their project to you if they submit it to you, even if they don't have an agent or representative who's bringing that project forward?
If it's submitted to us, then yes, absolutely. I think where the agent or the lawyer often helps is just that submission process, right? Is fast tracking that submission process to have it land right on our desk. But if we can get the submission, I'm not sitting there going, oh, well, this agent at WME brought this in, so I'm gonna be inclined to like it more, right? We're just taking everything at face value, and whatever the best projects are win more often than not. That said, when it is coming in from a smaller creator or a smaller production company, there always has to be a certain hesitation and vetting process that we have to go through to make sure that they're going to be able to follow through on the execution of the project, right? But I think that process should be expected for anybody as they're going through it. But the ideas itself will ultimately be the one that dictates the success of the project.
And Nadine spoke to, obviously, if you have your own channel, that's something you would highlight. Are there other specific things that William and other people could highlight to actually answer some of those questions in advance? If they have previous work that, from another field, but is there any tricks that you can share?
No, that's what I was going to say, previous work. Send us a clip from something they've produced already. Because as I said earlier, we're unlikely to work with first-time producers. And one of the reasons is that we're very small. This is the leanest, meanest team I've ever worked with. And so we can't do the amount of hand-holding I could do when I was at a broadcast network and had a bigger team. And I worked with a lot of first-time producers. So we're looking for them to come in with an established showrunner, or if they manage to get through to us with a piece of content or IP that we're very excited about, then we'll help bring in that established showrunner, as Alex said earlier.
Great. Here's a question about your kids programming. I just have to find it again. For almost 7 months, we have been providing video storytelling for kids all over the world. Since it's a Made for Kids channel, I can't promote. How can I work with YouTube to raise more awareness? Authors are sending me their books, and I really want to continue bringing literature to children in a fun way. How can I better work with you all?
I mean, I definitely understand the impact Made for Kids has had on creators who have been working on the platform for so long. And I would say, certainly in the originals case, if you're already seeing success in creating great content, especially around reading, which is in fact something we think a lot about, certainly that's a great candidate to bring to us. And I don't know if you have a channel, if you have a partner manager, or what your support system is, but that's the path I would go to say, like, what are the other marketing levers that we might be able to turn on.
Great. From Brittany, for creators that make premium content such as short films or limited digital series, etc., and do not have enough content to post consistently, how would you recommend building an audience on YouTube? Great question.
It is a great question. And one thing, I get that question a lot. And one thing I'm going to say to people who find themselves in that situation is, don't be precious. Don't think that you have to edit it perfectly and you can only put on the premium content, because a regular, consistent dropping of content on a channel, minimum twice a week, same time, same bad channel, really helps grow an audience. And again, just have fun with it, and you loosen up about what the kind of content you're sharing. Just make sure it's your voice, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
I'd agree with that, and I think that cadence is more important oftentimes than the specific quality of every single piece. And I think one way to prove that is look at some of the biggest creators in YouTube and go back and watch their early videos, right? They don't look like the new videos that they do now, right? Their first videos had flaws and mistakes and hiccups, and they can laugh about them now, but at the time there's a search and discovery that you're doing in terms of what's going to work with my audience. But I think as long as it comes from that place of authenticity, and you can start to build a cadence so that people can start to expect that they're going to have new content from you, I think that's the best way to create a subscriber base that's actually going to be leaned into your content.
Absolutely. Everything that I've learned suggests that the algorithm favors consistent posting.
And know that you're the same as some, like we work with some huge celebrities who are just starting their own channels, and they have the same journey. Like we have, I'm not going to disclose the name because I'm sure somebody will shout at me, but there was some like crazy fancy person who's like really big shot guy. He posted his first video and it tanked did terribly. And so over time, he learned what his audience was looking for from him. And eventually it grew, he's now well over 1 million. And he went back and deleted that first video because that first one had been so rough. So, you know, you're the same as the big fancy big shots, and you just got to decide to get in the game.
Here's a question on our successful submissions. Do you expect them to have a sizzle reel?
I think it goes with questions A, B, and C. It's like if you've got a big channel, then no. If you've got, you know, it's all interconnected.
I think certain projects come to life with a sizzle reel, right? Because you can really get across the tone of a project in a sizzle reel. But I don't think every project needs it. And oftentimes what we're seeing in a sizzle reel is not always really an accurate reflection of what the creative of the project is. And so in that case, I don't think it's as necessary. But it really depends on the creative of the project and whether the sizzle reel does a good job of proving out that concept or not.
Yeah, I totally agree.
My mailman just came. Late, but better than never. You know, through wind and sleet and Republican, you know. Okay. Speaking of politics, we have a question here. Are you interested in nonpartisan material filmed during the election aimed at youth to inspire civic participation? Not about the candidates or the political race itself, but about civic participation among you young people.
Well, it's actually one of our programming priorities for under 12. We have a whole section called You and Your Community. And so definitely an area of interest for the younger audience.
Great. I'm going here for another one. Sorry. This we spoke about a little bit earlier, but if somebody's coming to you with a project and they recognize that they don't necessarily have the show running experience that they now know you're looking for, how important is it that they have a director or a producer attached in terms of you evaluating that project? If that made sense.
You want to take that, Suzanne, or you want me to jump?
Go ahead, whatever you want. Go ahead. I've spoken to this.
No, listen, I think the stage one of our filtration system, for lack of a better word, is always going to be the idea itself. But then stage two is going to be the auspices, right? You know, we love this. Let's say we love this idea. Do we feel like this team can pull it off, right? Because we've all been involved in productions in which the idea was good, but the execution was poor, right? And so at some point, the auspices are going to be important. The question is, where do you need to lock in those auspices along the timeline? And frankly, that's different for every project, right? So it's real. I don't want to sound evasive, but it's just hard to answer that question in a vacuum, because on a project by project basis, it could make a huge difference, or it could make a minimal difference, because we could, you know, to what I was saying earlier, we could become involved and close the delta between where the idea is and where the execution needs to be. But oftentimes, just having the idea itself and not really having thought out the best way to execute that idea, that's not a fully formed pitch, right? So in a pitch, I think you need to bring the idea, but you also have to have a POV on how it's going to come to life.
What's your interest in animation, animated shorts, animated series?
Well, we just finished an election special that I mentioned, You Choose, which had a lot of animation in it. I think we're open to animation. You know, we're looking for big ideas and breakthrough moments, and again, touching on cultural zeitgeist. And if there's a way to do that in animation, great. It's a little bit harder to do it in animation, in that animation requires a longer lead time. But I think we'd be open to the right show, the right voice, the right topic.
There's some really, really cool animation channels on YouTube, and I'm just waiting for someone to take one of those and say, here, I'm going to work with this Jaden Animation, so I'm going to work with Odd Ones Out, or like, there's like really interesting animation channels that I feel like it's just ripe for the picking.
Here is a great question from Angela, who's a student. Does YouTube have a partnership program in which you work with young creators and universities?
Do we, guys? I don't know.
I don't know about broader YouTube. We don't specifically have one as YouTube Originals, right? But broader YouTube may.
YouTube Spaces, I think, has a lot of their like pop-up spaces in colleges and film schools, but obviously that's COVID's kind of changed the nature of what that can be. And there's definitely ad hoc engagement. Suzanne does a course at UCLA. There's definitely engagement, but not programmatic, I don't think.
And so we have our last question, because I see we're counting down to 6:30, and it's been a good day for all of us, and I need to go see what's in my mailbox. But we have a persistent member in the audience who wants me to ask again, for a hybrid nonfiction project, such as a hybrid documentary, can you give an average budget of what you would fund? Give some idea of what kind of money people could be thinking about.
We have paid, we have made deals where we have agreed to air a documentary and market it and spend a certain amount of money in marketing, but actually no fees. And we've paid all the way up to well, between $5 and $10 million. I will say, for some high-end documentaries with a lot of auspices, and everywhere in between. I've made a deal literally at every price point in between. When I worked at OWN, and Oprah had a documentary club, and this was 10 years ago, it was a blanket deal, and everyone had to, anyone who wanted to be part of the documentary club got $250,000 for a license fee and an airing on OWN. And I know there's, just a huge range out there. And so it just depends. That's as close
I understand the frustration of wanting to know what the specific budgets are, but I think we'd be doing everybody and, all of the people out there a disservice by saying it's $500,000, or something, because it's just not the case, right? It's what the market rate is for whatever the specific documentary is, and not every documentary, not every project is the same, right? In terms of the talent that's attached, in terms of how broad the topic is, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the truth is to Suzanne's point, it's going to be all over the range. But I think for the most part, we are competitive with what the market would offer for these things. And I think we do offer, more than just fees, right? Because if we can work on your project and we can put it on a channel, and maybe it's your own channel, or maybe it's a specific creator's channel, and then we can help you build an audience on that channel, even when we're done working with you as YouTube Originals, that audience stays there as subscribers. So the next video that you make, you may be able to monetize off of as you start to grow your subscriber base, and really YouTube becomes a business model for you rather than just an outlet for your creative.
I just want to echo one thing Alex said earlier, which is, I've been doing this a long time, and it's all about execution. So does the idea matter? Yes, the idea matters. But you want to sell something? Make an effort, put together a package, have IP attached. That's interesting IP. Come with a director that is got a very specific vision. Show us how it's going to be executed in a way. Well, you'd be surprised when you get as many pitches as we do, there's no new ideas, right? And I don't mean to sound cynical. There are new ideas, but you know what I'm saying. We hear a lot of a version of a version of a version of a type of show. So how are you going to make yours stand out? Why is yours fresh and different? Have a specific vision. Have a specific point of view. You know what I was my least favorite question when I worked at networks. I get it less now. My least favorite question was, what are you looking for? Because I'll tell you what the answer to that question is. I'm looking for someone to walk in with a really interesting point of view on something they're passionate about. That's what I'm interested in. I don't know what I'm interested in until you tell me why I should be interested in it. That's what I'm interested in. I don't want a family show. I don't want another, award show. There is no specific agenda. There is the agenda of breakthrough, interesting, compelling content. That's what we're looking for. Put it together. We can't wait to see you.
I think that is words echoed by many executives across many rooms. Well, first of all, I want to thank the nearly 500 people who joined us today in the audience. We are so grateful that you chose to spend an hour and a half with us today. And those of you who sent in questions, thank you. The questions we didn't get to, I'm sorry, there's never enough time. This presentation will actually be posted on the Television Academy website. So if you know people who couldn't attend, but you think would benefit from it, they can see it there. They won't get to see the wonderful sizzle reel. That was exclusive to this room only. So other than that, though, all of this information will be available at the Television Academy website. I want to quickly thank Barbara Chase and Dave who put this all together at the Academy staff. You guys rock. I want to thank my co-governor, Dan Berman, for being the best co-governor anybody could ask for. And I especially want to thank Suzanne, Nadine, and Alex for 90 minutes of your time and for your wonderful sharing of information. We can't wait. I'm gonna get on YouTube later tonight and watch something wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you, Lois.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.